Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome to another Mortal Kombat video. Now in today's History of Breakdown and Analysis, I'll be talking about none other than the ruthless conqueror and emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn. We need to go very far back in time, before that of the Edenian invasion, but just after life was starting to be created on Earthrealm. Now not much is known about the younger years of Shao Kahn's life. The earliest document we can in fact find about Shao Kahn is that originally he was a protector of Outworld and a advisor to the at the time ruler, the Dragon King Onaga. So originally it seemed like he served a very similar role that Raiden does play to Earthrealm, and although it didn't seem like he was an antagonist at this point in time, he did have his own plans in the pipeline. You see, Onaga had his own personal plan. Not only was he the ruler of Outworld, but the Dragon King was known to have an immortal army, and the reason why this was the case was due to the Dragon King's uncanny talent to use necromancy, as when a member of his army perished, he could simply bring them back from the dead. So he was nigh unstoppable when a war was brewing. Now Onaga himself had the idea of merging all the realms together. By doing so, he could become a being that would transcend that of the Elder Gods, that being the fabled One Being. Now realizing the power at his fingertips, Shao Kahn would plot behind the lines, and in fact poison the Dragon King, usurping Onaga in order to become the new ruler. Now unfortunately, Shao Kahn wasn't nearly as talented as Onaga when it came to necromancy, so he did somewhat lose the immortal army. However, despite this, Shao Kahn would rule Outworld with an iron fist, and decided to follow through on Onaga's plans of merging all the realms with Outworld, and that is something he was extremely successful in. By doing so, he became stronger with each different merge, and Shao Kahn basically turned a wasteland into an empire. As the years passed by, Shao Kahn went from realm to realm wreaking havoc, but one of the biggest chips on his shoulder was conquering the heaven-like Edenia. Not only had they won through Mortal Kombat, but he slayed their king, gained a wife by kidnapping Sindel, and of course a daughter through Kitana. But despite this huge victory for Shao Kahn, Sindel didn't want anyone to suffer the same fate, and thus sacrificed her life in order to create a protective ward for Earthrealm. As you see, shortly after Shao Kahn had conquered Edenia, Earthrealm was the next one he wished to pursue, but due to Sindel's interference, he was now forced to engage them through Mortal Kombat, so he couldn't pull any surprise attacks. And the battles would seemingly be extremely fierce, but despite Earthrealm's best efforts, things seemingly started to swing in Outworld's favor, especially when he recruited Shang Tsung, someone who was originally on Earthrealm's side. Now it's here where Outworld really did start pushing the fight against Earthrealm, but just before they could obtain their 10 consecutive victory, they would be stopped in their tracks by the warrior known as the Great Kung Lao. Now it's here where Shang Tsung was defeated and somewhat crippled, and with Shao Kahn understandably frustrated, he decided to resort to other measures. You see, he would forge an alliance with the Shogun, a dragon-human hybrid race that resided in Outworld, reaching out to the Shogun King Gorbak and recruiting his son into the Mortal Kombat tournament. It's here where Goro made a name for himself, as he would beat the Great Kung Lao and defeat every challenger that Earthrealm put before him. Now as this was all going on, back in Outworld, Shao Kahn was in the process of teaching the very young Kitana and Jade to be his royal bodyguards, as he learnt from his predecessor that it's always good to have someone watching your back. But Shao Kahn himself was rather unimpressed with Kitana. Although she had incredible traits from being an Edenian, he wanted something a bit more aggressive, and this would lead to him reaching out to Shang Tsung in order to create Melina from his flesh pits. And since Jade and Kitana were both very young at the time, she was just integrated and inserted into their life as Kitana's sister, so the two would naturally grow up together, and Shao Kahn was extremely satisfied with a somewhat successful heir. Now when we cut back to the Mortal Kombat tournament, this somewhat leads us up to the first Mortal Kombat game. Although Shao Kahn himself isn't active in that game at all, he's overseeing the events from Outworld as they are on the brink of victory. But despite having Goro and Shang Tsung present at the tournament, the pair are defeated by another Shaolin from Earthrealm. This time however, it is Liu Kang. So this means that Shao Kahn must pursue another 10 consecutive tournaments in order to merge the realm with his own. Now angered beyond disbelief, Shao Kahn would in fact schedule Shang Tsung's execution, but the sorcerer is narrowly able to wiggle his way out of it, saying that there is another way they can do this. Mortal Kombat 2. During the events of the second game, Shao Kahn plays much more of an active role, being the big bad and the antagonist of it. You see, during the events of the second game, they wanted to lure in Earthrealm defenders onto Outworld grounds. By doing so, they had the home field advantage and could force them into Mortal Kombat. However, they wouldn't do this willingly, so Outworld would kidnap Sonya Blade and hold her hostage. By doing so, it forced Earthrealm's hand to engage with them in Mortal Kombat. But despite the home field advantage, events played out much like the first tournament. Even with Shao Kahn being present and active in it, he would also be defeated by the Shaolin monk. Now absolutely shocked and angered, Shao would resort to desperate measures in order to get what he wanted. Mortal Kombat 3. Now during the third game, when the Earthrealm defenders returned back home, Shao Kahn wished to commence a full frontal assault against the realm. But first, in order to do this, he needed to resurrect Kitana's mother, Sindel. By doing so, he would remove the magical ward that she did have and also gain an ally from doing so. Now between the events of the second and the third game, Kitana had strayed away from Shao Kahn as she learnt the truth about her heritage and joined Earthrealm's defenders in order to stop him. Now with Sindel back, Shao Kahn would begin his full frontal assault, creating multiple death squads to kill as many Earthrealmers as possible, with Johnny Cage being one of his many victims. Now thousands would fall during this fight, but despite the odds against them, Earthrealm would keep pushing back, and even Kitana was able to save her mother by reminding her of what happened to Edenia, so Sindel would turn against Shao Kahn. Now during the climax of the game, whilst both sides were taking casualties, Shao Kahn would be confronted by a descendant of the great Kung Lao, that being the current Kung Lao. Now wishing to defeat Shao, Kung Lao would take him head on, but despite putting up a valiant battle, Shao Kahn proved to be far too strong for him, and the Shaolin monk was seemingly slain. Now this in turn enraged Liu Kang, who would battle Shao Kahn once again, and much like the second tournament, Liu was able to defeat him. Now although Shao Kahn wasn't killed, his forces would return back home, and Shao Kahn himself was so incredibly weakened from this fight that fragments of Outworld began to unravel, and from this, realms were finally able to break away from him, including that of Edenia, so Sindel and Kitana were able to reclaim their home. Now Shao Kahn is absent during the events of the fourth game, as it's Shinnok who's the main antagonist of it, but as he's invading and attacking the realms, Shao Kahn is using this time to recover his lost power and gain new allies. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Now after the fallen Elder God is defeated by Liu Kang, and Shao Kahn has somewhat recovered from his loss in the third game, things don't seem to be panning out very well for the Emperor, because due to the passive role he did play in the fourth game and the weakness he showed after his loss, he lost the Shogun as his allies, and they in turn would side with Edenia, as the Edenians were preparing a full attack on Outworld, so Shao Kahn lost a valuable faction in his army. This war would wage on for many years, and as the years passed by, Shao Kahn began to realize how dangerous things were becoming. With Edenia on his doorstep, he took precautions in order to guarantee his survival, like creating a clone, as Shao had suspected that Shang Tsung would turn on him at some point in time, and to no one's surprise, during the events of Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi would enter his throne room and seemingly kill the Emperor. By doing so, they would go on to kill Liu Kang and cause havoc across the realms. Now after Shao Kahn faked his death, he decided that he wished to go into hiding. By doing so, he could plot in the shadows and formulate a plan that would allow him to come back stronger than before. Now around the time frame of Deadly Alliance and Deception, Shao Kahn's former ally Goro would be severely wounded by the assassin Noob Saibot, and when Shao came across his body, he decided to nurse Prince Goro back to health. By doing so, he secretly gained an ally once again, and with Goro's influence, the Shogun had swayed from Edenia's side and once again was aligned with Outworld. Now when Shao had caught word of Onaga's return, he decided to not get involved, as by doing so it would reveal that he was still alive, and Shao at the time wasn't entirely sure that he could defeat Onaga. But luckily for Shao, the Dragon King would be defeated by Shijinko and was seemingly cast into the Netherrealm. Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Now when Shao Kahn learns that the end times are coming and the power that lies within the Pyramid of Argus, he returns back to Outworld, making his presence known. Now when he enters his throne room, he's seemingly confronted by Kitana, as she was able to conquer Outworld in his absence. But once Kitana pulls off her veil, he learns that it's Melina. She would give up her position of ruler in order for Shao to become Emperor once again. Now during the conquest mode of Armageddon, he's seen forming an alliance with Quan Chi, Shang Tsung and Onaga, as all of them learn about the power that Blaze holds and all wish to obtain it. Now during the Battle of Armageddon, Shao Kahn can be seen on the forces of darkness taking on the forces of light, and he's able to deal some heavy damage to many of Earthrealm's defenders. But once the Pyramid of Argus rises, his alliance does dissolve, as he goes after Shang Tsung and attempts to brutally kill him on the pyramid. But before he's able to take the life of the sorcerer, he's seemingly attacked and carried away by Onaga. Now not much is really known about this interaction, but by the end of the Battle of Armageddon, Shao Kahn is the one to defeat Blaze and obtain his godlike power. So it is somewhat implied that Shao Kahn killed Onaga, or was able to weaken him enough to get away from him. Now once Shao Kahn is able to obtain the power of Blaze, he finally fulfills his dream of bringing on true Armageddon, merging all of the realms and truly somewhat become the one being. Now the last victim of this battle is none other than Dark Raiden. Now although he is corrupted, he still wishes for Earthrealm survival, and thus sends a message to his past self before Shao Kahn can crush his skull. And thus this brings us onto our reboot in Mortal Kombat 9. Now for the most part, a lot of things do stay the same with Shao Kahn. He's still the same ruthless tyrant and has been conquering realms like Edenia. However, the one big main difference here is that they've somewhat expanded the lore on the realms he did conquer. So we do get to see how he enslaved the Oztecs as well as the Chitans. It expands on a lot of the already existing lore in a beneficial way. And although it isn't entirely too set in stone, as she is a DLC character, it's implied that his power and influence was strong enough to seduce Sindel, and thus she turned on Jared, betraying him for Shao Kahn, so he would take her as his wife. But this wouldn't last for very long, as she was apparently killed in secret by Quan Chi, something of which Shao Kahn was unaware of. Now unimpressed with the daughter that Sindel left behind, Shao Kahn ordered Shang Tsung to start working on the perfect daughter for him, that being Mileena. But unlike the original timeline, Mileena wouldn't surface until much later. Now things would continue to flow much like the original continuity. Shao Kahn would set his eyes on Earthrealm and engage with them in Mortal Kombat. Events transpired in a very similar way, with the great Kung Lao causing interference and Goro becoming his champion, and the tournament would progress leading up to the events of the first game, which Liu Kang once again defeated Goro and Shang Tsung. Now during the MK2 section of the game, things do pan out in a similar manner, but due to MK9 having a full-on fleshed out story mode, we're able to see a lot more interactions that Shao Kahn does have, as he is far more visibly present now than he was in the original timeline. We get to see him interact with the second Sub-Zero, as the Lin Kuei ninja is requesting a battle against Scorpion, as the second Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang, wants vengeance against Scorpion for killing his brother in the first tournament, something that Shao Kahn does give him after he does prove himself. Now a really beneficial part of the reboot is that we get to see more interactions between Shao Kahn and Kitana. Despite Kitana being his somewhat daughter, he treats her absolutely no different to the rest of his subordinates, for when she failed her mission to stop Sub-Zero from making it to the Colosseum. Now because of this, he does send her away, but does appear much later in her chapter, where he's confronted by herself and Shang Tsung, as Kitana was able to wander into the flesh pits and meet her clone sister Mileena. Now despite Kitana wanting Shang Tsung executed, it's here where the Emperor reveals the truth about how he destroyed Edenia and that her father was a coward. With Mileena now being seen as the perfect replacement, he saw no need to have Kitana and does schedule her execution. Now as we draw closer and closer to the end of the MK2 section of the game, there are some slight tweaks and alterations. You see, the universe was rebooted when Raiden sent a message to his past self. By doing so, it created a ripple effect that would change and alter the timeline, with some being minor tweaks and changes, whilst others were major alterations. Now due to this, there was a disconnect between Raiden and Liu Kang, so the two didn't entirely trust each other. So during the end of MK2, Kung Lao does step up to replace Liu Kang and takes on the likes of Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, as well as Kintaro. Now as Kung Lao is celebrating his victory, Shao Kahn would take this opportunity to walk up behind the Shaolin and mercilessly snap his neck, which obviously is very different to that of the original continuity, as Kung Lao's apparent death didn't happen up until MK3. Now when this happened, Liu Kang was furious and would battle the Emperor in one-on-one combat, with Shao Kahn being beaten by the Shaolin, seemingly killing the Emperor. But this wasn't quite the end of Shao Kahn, as after the events of the second tournament, with some assistance from Quan Chi, his wounds are healed and he begins his mass invasion of Earthrealm once Sindel is resurrected. Now multiple death squads are sent out, but once again there is a massive change and alteration to the continuity. In the original timeline, Motaro was the individual that killed Johnny Cage, but due to some interference from Raiden, it is Motaro who is killed. And when the centaur is brought before Shao Kahn, he finally decides that it's time to pull out all stops and sacrifices Shang Tsung, infusing the thousands of souls he has with Sindel. So she would be given the order to track down the Earthrealm defenders and to kill them all. Now although Sindel does perish during the MK3 section of the game, she is successful in killing a handful of the Earthrealm defenders, with the only remaining individuals being Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, Liu Kang and Raiden. So with Earthrealm on the back foot, Shao Kahn would take this opportunity to begin merging the realms together. Now as he begins stepping through, a fight breaks out between Liu Kang and Raiden, of which Liu Kang Kahn is defeated and accidentally killed, so it means that Shao is on the brink of victory here. However, as he prepares to crush the Thunder God's skull, the Elder Gods finally interfere, as Shao Kahn has broken the rules of Mortal Kombat by attempting to merge another realm with his own without a victory through Mortal Kombat. So the Elder Gods would empower Raiden with their divine strength, and the Emperor would be defeated by Raiden, to which he's then seemingly taken before the Elder Gods to be destroyed. Now Shao Kahn is absent during the events of Mortal Kombat X, but does resurface during Mortal Kombat 11. As you see, after Raiden's meddling of the timelines, the Titan known as Kronika wishes to remove Raiden from the timeline and create a new era in her vision, but in order to do so she must reach into the past in order to bring forth allies, with Shao Kahn being one of these individuals. Now this is where things get slightly complicated. So about 25 years has passed by since the events of MK9. Allies of Shao Kahn are seemingly gone, and the current Khan of the realm is Kotal, a former general of Shao Kahn. Now when Kronika merges the two timelines together, she merges everyone present in MK2 just before Kung Lao had his neck broken with the current timeline that takes place in Mortal Kombat 11. So Shao Kahn is alive and present once again, being brought forward in the current continuity. Now when he's brought to the present time, he's ultimately, like everyone else, extremely confused of what's going on, and when he sees Kotal on his throne, he demands answers. And it's here where Raiden puts 2 and 2 together, as Kotal reveals to Shao his ultimate fate. Now disgusted that someone like Kotal would replace him, he would attack the Oztec, and a massive battle would break out. Now in this altercation, Shao is able to gain the upper hand on Kotal, but before Shao can deal the final blow, Liu Kang does interfere, giving Kotal the opportunity he needs to regain his composure. Now an all-out war would break out in the Colosseum, with Shao attacking everyone on sight, but it isn't long before he's once again confronted by Kotal and seemingly defeated by the Oztec. But before he can be killed, the arena is attacked by a swarm of bugs controlled by Devora, who saves Shao Kahn and his ally and takes them to the Chitin High. It's here where he also learns that Devora slayed Mileena, but before he can kill the Chitin, Kronika intervenes and reveals to him who she truly is. Now rather taken back, Shao Kahn is surprised to see a being like Kronika and wonders why this was done. Why was time broken? Now it's here where Kronika reveals her ultimate plan of creating a new world and says that anyone that does assist her will also be granted their greatest desires. Now Shao Kahn having a lust for power, he would side himself with Kronika. From here, Shao would travel to the outskirts of Outworld, remaining in Tarkata to formulate a plan of attack on Kotal, whilst Kronika was accumulating her own power. But call it luck or fate, Jade and Kotal just so happened to end up at his doorstep. As you see, they secretly tried to infiltrate a Tarkatan camp, but the pair raised alarms and would eventually be captured, with Kotal being dragged off to the Outworld Colosseum, whilst Jade would be tortured by Scarlet. So it's here where we see Shao boast to the crowd as he prepares to execute Kotal. But before the ceremony can begin, the doors to the arena are knocked down. You see, while Shao was scheduling the execution, Kitana reached out to the Shogun and the Tarkatans in order to unite them together. By doing so, they could defeat Shao Kahn and ultimately create a realm where everyone was equal. Now despite the Shogun and Tarkatans being rather weary about this, they ultimately do side with Kitana, as they know that even under Shao Kahn's rule, things would not be much better. So the Colosseum would be stormed by Kitana and her army, and a huge battle would break out, with Kitana confronting Shao Kahn. Now as the battle wars on, Shao is able to break away from Kitana and decides that if he can't have Outworld, then neither can Kotal, as he grabs the Oztec and cripples him by breaking his back. But despite this small victory for Shao Kahn, it allows Kitana to take advantage of his overconfidence, and the Emperor is defeated. And to guarantee that he wouldn't come back from this, she wouldn't kill Shao Kahn, but in fact slash him across the eyes with her fans, blinding the now fallen Emperor. So this is in fact the last time we do see Shao Kahn in the Mortal Kombat continuity, because from this point onwards, the universe is somewhat reset when Kronika is defeated by Fire God Liu Kang, and with a new world being created by Kitana and Liu Kang, we are left with questions of what exactly has happened to Shao Kahn here, and I believe we won't actually know until the next installment. But yes, that is it for the history of Shao Kahn. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned more by doing so. I had a lot of fun with this one, as Shao Kahn is my favourite antagonist in the series. He's so charismatic and so ruthless, I can't help but enjoy how ridiculous he is. Now what do you believe is Shao Kahn's fate? And when there is another Mortal Kombat game, do you think he'll return, or do you think he's somewhat done for the time being? Please do comment down below, as I'm interested to hear what you all have to say. But yes, that's everything I did want to say here. So before this video wraps up, if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes. It's honestly the best way of supporting this channel, and also do not forget to tick that bell and subscribe, as it's honestly the best way of supporting this channel. As always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I will see you all next time.